It's pretty amazing how far two wheels and your own personal fuel will get you. Opting for slow, sometimes painful, but in the end, a very rewarding way to travel, forcing you to really conceptualize how much terrain you're actually crossing and the diverse types of land as well. Braving the elements, weathering through thunderstorms, tornadoes, snow, hail, and the brutal sun and heat. This is no easy way to travel. But in the end, it's amazing what this contraption has done and can still do. The bicycle has led to growth for humankind all over the world in so many ways, taking us so many places over the mere 207 years since it was invented. It's an intense form of travel, definitely not for the lighthearted, especially when you plan on cycling around the world. On today's episode of Travel Flow Radio, we discuss the journey of 18,000 miles, or just shy of 29,000 kilometers. Taking his bicycle around the world, we discuss the wonders and the struggles he has encountered. So sit back and enjoy today's episode of Travel Flow Radio. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Travel Flow Radio. I'm your host, Indigo, and today we're recording from Thailand on the coast of Thailand in Riley Beach, near Ao Nang, near Krabi is more of a well-known place, but we're recording today. We have a gorgeous view. We're sitting on the balcony. In front of us is the ocean and these huge, amazing limestone rocks that are just kind of shooting up out of the water. And these rocks are what got me to have this episode today, because I went rock climbing and I met this lovely person named Chris who has an amazing story today. He is cycling around the world. He has an amazing journey to talk to us about. So welcome to today's episode, and we're going to get to know Chris and his story. So hi, Chris. Welcome to the party, or welcome to the podcast. Yeah. I guess it could be a party too.
Yeah, it is for sure.
But thanks for coming.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm psyched to get to have like some time to just hang out and chat about traveling and stuff.
Yeah, cool. Well, you can just tell people like a little bit about yourself and kind of why did you start this journey and kind of what it's all entailing and all that good stuff.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Chris McCaffrey. I'm 24 years old. I'm from Boulder, Colorado, or been living in Boulder, Colorado for quite a while now.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, I'm cycling around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of the context for that is that I am riding within the sort of general framework outlined by the Guinness Book of World Records for what defines a complete circumnavigation of the world by bicycle. And so that's 18,000 miles or 29,000 kilometers, I believe.
Uh-huh.
And I just ticked over past 20,000 kilometers, or 12,000 miles. And
beautiful.
And so approaching the back like quarter of the trip now, and but I started in Boulder. I left from Full Cycle, which is a bike shop in Boulder that I've been going to for years, but they've been really supportive of me and my trip, and so I left from Full Cycle, and I'll be cycling back to Full Cycle in hopefully a few months' time.
So you went from Boulder and then across and up the United States and over into Newfoundland, you said, right?
Yeah, so I started in Boulder. I cycled across the Midwest, up along the Great Lakes, through Niagara Falls.
And this was in July last year when you started?
I left in June. June of I guess last year. It's March now. So I left June 10th. So I cycled through the Midwest, up Niagara Falls, like popped over into Canada and then back into the States, to Bar Harbor in Maine.
Okay.
And then I took the ferry from Bar Harbor to Nova Scotia, and I cycled across Nova Scotia. And then I took the ferry from the very end of Nova Scotia to Newfoundland. And then I cycled this amazing route called the Newfoundland Trailway. Yeah. This like converted railway line into this like just incredible access road now, and I cycled that to St. John's, Newfoundland, which is the easternmost point in North America.
Wow, okay. And is most of the roads that you've been on have been paved roads? Have you been going on gravel roads, dirt roads?
I've been traveling mostly on paved roads just because it's so much faster.
So much easier, yeah.
And it's so much less wear on the bike, and I've had a lot of mechanical issues. But I've been on dirt roads a bit, particularly in like Slovenia. I crossed almost all of Slovenia on
a dirt
roads.
road. Wow.
And some dirt roads in the U.S. just to try and get away from traffic, because traffic in the Midwest was a really big issue because there's just no one like
biking there.
Yeah, it's a rural paved, no shoulder, narrow farm road where there's probably never been a cyclist, or there hasn't been one in like a year or two. And so people are just driving home
and
on
they
this
don't
perfectly straight paved road, and they're not expecting a cyclist. So that felt like pretty intimidating.
Pretty dangerous there.
So I took a lot of dirt roads, through Nebraska, Iowa, that region as well.
Okay, cool. So we get to Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And then
I flew to Paris.
Okay, so is that technically skipping some land?
Yeah, so the
or is this still in the regulations of the Guinness Book of World Records?
The idea of the Guinness Book of World Records is that, or from the Guinness Book of World Records, is that it's 18,000 miles riding, and I believe 18,000 miles is the circumference of the Earth
at
the
roundest
latitude of average landmass. And since there's more land in the northern hemisphere, it's shorter than the actual circumference of the Earth.
Oh, okay.
But also, if you ride like a straight line across like the main land masses, you end up around 18,000 miles. And so it originally was 15,000 miles. Then they updated the Guinness Book updated it from 15,000 to 18,000 miles, maybe 10 years ago. And so, loosely the plan is to be somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
I think it'll be around 18,000.
Okay. And are you trying to beat this record?
I'm not.
You're just trying to do it?
Yeah, so the current speed record is held by Mark Beaumont.
Okay.
And
how quickly did he do it?
76 days.
76 days.
240 miles a day. But he did it fully supported with a van. He had a mechanic and a chef.
Like behind him.
Yeah.
Oh, so he was just streamlining it.
Yeah, totally. The other thing is doing it this year is definitely not the easiest politically. And not being able to go through Russia is very, very limiting. And then also with the challenges in the Uyghur region in Western China, and tensions between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, tensions between Pakistan and India, a lot of those borders became very difficult to impossible, and we're opening, closing. So I flew to Paris. General rule is you have to ride the 18,000 miles, but the total distance is going to be closer to 30,000 miles. I believe it has to be 26,000 miles, but you'll definitely be over that with flights.
Yeah.
And so you're allowed to take alternative means of transportation to get like across the oceans, fly, and then also one of the ideas behind that, and why I really wanted to kind of establish the trip with that guideline, is it gives you way more flexibility to kind of, it's more like the guidelines are a framework, and then by them being a little bit looser, you have so much more flexibility to do things like, I didn't get a visa for Tajikistan.
Yeah.
And so there was no way to then get permits to cross into Kyrgyzstan to enter China. The Tajik-China border has been closed. The Kazakh-China border is closed. Then it's well within the rules just to fly south. And so I flew to Delhi from Tajikistan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so to get more into that route-wise. So I flew to Paris.
Yeah.
I cycled from Paris to Dushanbe, Tajikistan.
Okay.
I went across Europe. I had a pretty bad mechanical issue in Serbia, so I skipped Bulgaria, which was a bit of a bummer. But like I couldn't really do anything about it.
What kind of mechanical issue did you have?
I snapped my wheel.
Oh, like the metal part of it.
The metal part of the rim actually cracked
And did you crash? Was it while you were riding?
No, it was while I was riding, but I heard it
And it just
crack.
then you just stopped.
Yeah, and I rode another 400 miles on it broken.
Wow.
To get to Belgrade, but
I'm like, I don't even really know how a tire snap looks like.
Well, so it's actually like the metal part of the rim of the wheel, and so what had happened was the force going through the rear wheel had caused the rim. Basically, as you weight the wheel, there's a stress at the bottom of the wheel, and at the top of the wheel.
Yeah.
That the spoke is pulling on the top and it's pushing on the bottom.
Okay.
And then that stress is a constant, like, rotating force. So the wheel it's not in the same stress constantly. And so the stressing and then loosening and stressing and loosening, eventually the rim, it had a small, like, manufacturing issue probably.
Yeah.
Which then caused it to crack, like, just open.
Okay, so it was like the outer rim that cracked.
Yes.
Okay, so you can still ride with that.
Yeah, it just caused the wheel to go out of true.
Okay, so it's kind of wobbly.
Yeah, but I was able to find bike shops to keep replacing spokes.
Yeah.
And I was able to
keep going. That's awesome.
To Belgrade, and then
Yeah, well, that's really good. And I'm so curious, like, how are you keeping up with your miles? Do you have a little, like, speedometer or like a mileometer? I don't really know the words.
I have a little bike computer.
Oh, okay, cool. So that tells you, and does it tell you how fast you're going?
Yeah, it tells me, like, how fast I'm going, how far I've gone that day.
What's the top speeds do you hit?
On a flat road, no wind, I usually sit at about 12 to 15 miles an hour.
Okay, cool. And fastest speed?
My fastest speed on the whole trip was, I don't know, maybe my mom will listen to this podcast. She wouldn't be so psyched.
It's okay. She can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
I'll publish once you're done.
Yeah,
maybe
I
not.
hit about 70 miles an hour.
Wow.
In Vermont.
That would be so scary with all your your bags, because I'm assuming do you have quite the luggage on, or no?
I have a fair amount of luggage. Actually, it would have been, I'm converting it back in my head from kilometers. Would have been like 62 and change.
62 miles per hour, and then how much would that be in kilometers?
It's like a little over 100.
A little over 100.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
But it was just like a long straight hill, and I was having some brake issues.
Oh gosh.
And so braking was really, really challenging.
So you kind of were like going this speed against your will, not really by choice.
I definitely was in control of, like, could slow down. But yeah, no, it was quite entertaining.
Yeah, I bet. That sounds crazy.
But yeah, and so most of the time I'm sitting at 12-ish miles an hour.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty solid. And how much weight are you carrying in bags?
Really good question. My bike itself weighs about 20-ish pounds.
Okay, so then that would be like 40 kilograms or so.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit less.
30 something kilograms.
Yeah.
And then I have about 40 pounds of gear.
Wow, that seems kind of like a lot.
It definitely is a lot, and like not a lot at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like
so you have 2 back bags on the back wheel.
Yep. And then I have a tent that goes in between them on the top of my pannier rack.
Okay.
And then I have
little front bag.
Yeah, it's 20 liters.
Okay.
Or roughly 20 liters. And it's like a top loading bag. It works super well.
Okay, awesome. I would love if you could send me a picture.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture of the bike.
Yeah.
And so,
awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, and going back to the route, just give like the rest of the general overview was I wrote generally from Paris to Dushanbe, Tajikistan. I went through Europe, through Turkey, Georgia, and then I kind of ended up in this like corner where you get boxed in. So on an American passport, you can't enter Iran.
Oh, not at all.
Not at all. And so then I had to go north. The plan was to go to Azerbaijan, and there's a ferry from Baku to Aktau, Kazakhstan. Aktau being like the westernmost point of Mangistau, like the southern Kazakh steppe area.
Mm-hmm. I'm learning all these new countries. Like I've heard of a lot of these, but I need to be looking at a map. I need to travel. I need a full map, travel globe, something.
I think one of the interesting things about this trip is like how much more I can look at a globe and see more than I did before, if that makes sense.
Oh, of course, yeah. Definitely traveling helps geography so much more.
Totally.
Yeah. You're actually there.
So I ended up in this corner where couldn't go into Iran, and then I couldn't go into Russia because of the war with Ukraine. And then Azerbaijan closed their border. And so I rode to Tbilisi in Georgia, and then flew from Tbilisi to Aktau over the Caspian Sea.
Oh, wow.
Rather than take the ferry, which was a little annoying because it was like 2 or 3 days cycling from Tbilisi to the ferry port.
Yeah, and just like kind of wasted time.
Yeah, and it's like...
And do you count those miles as well?
Like,
if you were to go up, like say you try to go into a different country and you have to backtrack and go a different way, or did you not really backtrack?
I haven't had to backtrack at all, yeah. I knew the border was going to be closed. By the time I left Turkey, I knew the border wasn't going to be open. And so the plan was arrive to Tbilisi, fly to Aktau, which was totally fine. I just flew over the Caspian Sea.
And how is it flying with a bicycle?
Oh, it's not too bad.
Does it break down? You just keep the bicycle whole? You just disassemble it
in a bike box. Basically, like every bike shop that sells bikes gets their bikes sent to the shop in a box, and then they assemble them at the shop. But the box is then just sitting there. So it's really easy
to get a box.
Very cheap to get a box.
And then is it how annoying is it to assemble and put back together?
Not at all. Yeah, maybe takes 30 minutes to an hour to pack and maybe an hour to build.
Not too bad.
Not too bad at all.
Not too bad.
And so I ended up having to fly over the Caspian Sea, and then I rode from Aktau, Kazakhstan, across the Mangistau Desert, and then went into depending on what map you look at, either I entered Uzbekistan, but first I went into Karakal, Pakistan, which was its own country prior to the fall of... It was its own country, then the USSR controlled it all, and then at the fall of the USSR, it was like somewhat arbitrarily given back to Uzbekistan, even though culturally it's not quite
its
Uzbek,
own
and
thing.
they don't speak Uzbek. And
yeah.
But anyway, so I went into Karakal, Pakistan, which was a phenomenally interesting place, and then into like the main part of Uzbekistan, through the main like Silk Road cities, like following the Silk Road.
Oh wow,
which was
super interesting.
Yeah, seeing like Bukhara and Samarkand, and it was just unbelievable. And then I cycled up into the Pamir Mountains. I went over.
Where was that?
The Pamirs are kind of it's the northernmost range of like the very, very greater Himalaya.
Okay.
But it's its own mountain range.
Okay, super cool.
And so, yeah, it's...
And then like heading into Nepal from there?
So I went into Tajikistan, but I applied for a
all
Tajik
these stans.
visa. Yeah, all the
like
stans.
I can't keep up with the stans.
Yeah. But I applied for a Tajik visa twice.
Okay.
And was denied both times.
Why?
It's a really good question.
You still don't know the answer?
No. It's not like a clear answer.
Is it something to do with like a U.S. passport, or?
Probably just had to do with the way that like global politics have been playing out this year. It's just so tense.
It's so difficult.
And so I was able to enter Tajikistan on a 14-day transit permit.
Okay.
Which I was really excited about because Boulder, Colorado, and Dushanbe, Tajikistan are sister cities.
Oh, no way.
And I don't know if anyone has ever cycled from Boulder to Dushanbe before.
Oh, you gotta look that up.
Ride into Dushanbe.
And did you make it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
so I
good.
cycled into Dushanbe. Dushanbe is an amazing city. The Pamir Mountains are like the most ridiculous mountain range ever, and like no one knows about them.
Oh, I will have to write them down and check them out.
Oh, it's so amazing. And I was specifically in the Fan Mountains, which is super beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, a whole bunch of stuff happened along the way, but I arrived in Dushanbe, had an amazing time in Dushanbe, got to meet some super cool people through the Sister Cities program. There's an exchange where Dushanbe had built a tea house in Dushanbe. It was like a tea house in Dushanbe. They then disassembled it, shipped it to Boulder, and reassembled it in Boulder.
Wow.
And then similarly, Boulder had built a library in Dushanbe. And there's an exchange program where university age students from Dushanbe can come to Boulder to study and work for a year, and it's
Okay.
all their stuff is taken care of.
And is that they work like in that tea house, or they just connected
like
with
they
the
can work
people?
with whatever it is that they.
That's
with
really
the city,
cool.
Boulder government, with a variety of different things, and so
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and so they had thrown me like a party.
Oh, that's so sweet because they saw you coming in on a bike and they
and
just
so we've been
randomly asked
connected.
you.
Yeah, so I've been chatting with like the Boulder Dushanbe
online.
Through email. I'd gotten connected with the person who runs the Sister Cities program.
Cool.
And so yeah, that was amazing. Cycled into Dushanbe.
That's a good welcoming too, especially when you've been going at it for so long and I feel like tired, you have your ups and downs, to have like a welcoming, like feeling like at home again. Boulder Sister City and a welcoming party there.
Yeah. It was really cool.
A nice breakup in the trip.
I hadn't really spoke to anyone who spoke English in a long time at that point.
Yeah, like maybe since like you left Europe, that was like the last bit of the English speakers, or
I mean, I'd met people who spoke English in Turkey and in Georgia.
Yeah.
But I mean, I literally did not speak to anyone else who understood a word that I said.
Isn't that crazy?
Entering Kazakhstan.
Did you, when you started talking in, did your throat hurt?
Oh, it was.
Were you that quiet, or were you still making noise?
No, like I was making noise and like chatting a little bit with people.
Like singing? Like, do you sing while you're on the bike?
I don't know if I've ever.
Because me, I love to sing. So if I was riding a bike, I would be singing all the time.
I definitely like talk to myself when I ride more. But yeah, no, it wasn't like that extreme. But it was really cool to be around someone who's like actually fluent in English. And, so from Dushanbe, I flew south to Delhi, and I rode from Delhi to Kathmandu.
Okay.
I flew to Hanoi, Vietnam.
From Kathmandu?
From Kathmandu.
Kathmandu's in India or is Myanmar? Nepal. Okay. Yeah. So from Nepal to Vietnam.
Yeah. You can't enter Myanmar.
Okay.
At least.
Why not?
Land.
For a U.S. passport? Or
I don't think anyone can enter Myanmar by land if you're not like a resident of a bordering town.
Well, that's really good to know because I was thinking about going there, and now I can't.
Yeah. You might be able to fly into the capital city, but I don't think you can.
I didn't want to fly. I wanted to get in by land, but...
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like it's so close to us right now. It would make sense. But,
yeah. So we're in Hanoi now. We made it to Hanoi.
Yeah, so I flew to Hanoi.
Which is northern Vietnam.
Northern Vietnam.
For people.
The idea was it's like the closest point that's like logistically makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I could fly into China, but I couldn't enter Tibet, which was my original goal. And so I could have flown to Kunming, but then it's only maybe 2 days cycling from Kunming to the border.
And then you have to fly again?
No, I would have just cycled into Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
But I knew of people having issues at that border, and it just didn't seem worth it for 2 days.
To risk it, yeah.
And so I flew to Hanoi, and then rode south, and now here we are in Krabi.
And you went through Laos, and then we're in Thailand.
And now
we're here. And now we're here today on this perch.
Yeah.
So how many countries have you gone through?
I think 20.
20?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I would kind of almost expect more, but I guess you've been doing a lot of jumping around. And
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think it's 20. Now I'm headed south to Singapore.
Yeah. So how much planning did you put into this before you started?
A fair amount of planning in a way that was like actually not that helpful in the end.
Yeah. I feel like that's how a lot of trips go. Like sometimes I've done all this planning. As soon as I get on the trip, I throw it all out the window.
Totally.
But like for a whole year you planned?
I had a route in mind. The problem was in practice, the route is just wasn't really possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the main crux of that being entering Western China by land.
Yeah, can't do that.
It might have been possible, but it was very up in the air. Entering Western China, there's a few problems there. The problem with entering China was the Tajik visa, because I needed to get a visa in order to then get a permit to enter the region of the Pamir Mountains that I was planning to cycle to then get to a border crossing with China.
Yeah.
I was not able to get that. I could have gotten around that by going into Kyrgyzstan earlier, because similarly, the Tajik-Kyrgyz border was closed.
Okay.
the Tajik Chinese border was also closed. So I could have cut north into Kyrgyzstan. It was snowing at this point.
I was wondering if you had been through any snow.
Yes, so I have been through some snow.
So you have a full winter gear.
I had, I sent it back.
Oh, you sent it back now that you're in this warmer weather.
Yeah. But it was quite cold in Central Asia. But yeah, so there's a lot of logistical issues with crossing into China. It might have been possible. I'd heard that this border crossing from Kyrgyzstan into Western China opens like a few times a month.
Just randomly?
Well, I was told that when I was there, a motorcycle traveler had tried to go, and he said he'd missed the opening by like a couple days, and that there were people waiting, like locals waiting at the border, and they said it was going to be like 3 weeks until.
Wow.
And so, based on like the general framework of this cycling 18,000 miles, continuous like eastward line, but not like being able to take flights and stuff like that, I just decided to fly to India just to made life so much easier.
Yeah. I never would have thought that like all the border crossings would have like politically not being able to get into them and all these political problems would really affect your trip like that.
Yeah, I definitely underestimated how hard that would be.
Yeah. Well,
it's interesting. So I read this book that was an inspiration for me to want to cycle around the world.
Yeah.
And so
is that where you got the idea?
Generally, yeah. There's this guy, Alistair Humphreys, a really good author. He wrote a book called Moods of Future Joys.
Mm-hmm.
He spent 5 years cycling around the world.
Wow.
And I love the book, but I was reading it like, wow, like I would not have done it this way. And I kept thinking like, oh, I would have done this differently. I would have done this differently. And then at a certain point, like, if I'm having all these thoughts about how differently I was going to do it, then I should just go do it.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
So
just test it out yourself.
Yeah.
That's a really cool way to think about it. And like, now are you kind of biting your words and being like, oh well, now that I'm doing it, maybe I just can see why he did it this way?
To some extent, he just was on a very different trip that was a lot less athletically oriented. And one of the things that I really
You said athletically oriented?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that I really wanted to prioritize was, like we talked about earlier, but Mark Beaumont's got this like speed record.
Yes.
And that's purely athletic. And Alistair Humphreys spending 5 years doing the route. He did a slightly different route.
Like purely experiencing it.
Totally.
And yeah.
And I feel like the kind of framework of cycling hard and like crossing a landmass fast is a really like entertaining one. I really enjoy that. But also having that bit extra time to experience it,
to enjoy.
Yeah.
Because is this your first time coming to like this side of the world and like traveling through all these places? I'm sure a lot of it's first time, but
definitely most of it is first time. Most of my adult life has been oriented around adventure travel and like adventure expedition travel.
Yeah.
And so I haven't been like I've never been to Southeast Asia.
Okay. But other parts of Asia you have?
I'd been to when I was 8. My parents and I went to China.
Oh, okay, cool.
But other than that, no, I haven't really been to Asia. And so like the places were new, but doing sort of a long like athletic pursuit isn't really new.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I was thinking earlier when we were talking about weather, like I know we were talking about tornadoes earlier. Before we started recording, because tornadoes are a big part of my life also. But have you ever had to stop cycling, or how many times, or what weather conditions do you stop cycling in?
Oh, we could
talk about, push through?
We could talk about my weather issues for like 4 hours.
Maybe give us a top 2 or something.
So yeah, I've definitely had some significant weather challenges on this trip. So day 1 of the trip.
Day 1, how did you feel day 1?
Day 1 was interesting. I don't necessarily know if I like felt that much, if that makes sense. It was more of I turned in my last paper to graduate from university the day before I left on the trip.
Wow. So you're just like sayonara.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in hindsight, I could have given myself a little more time. But
Yeah, I do that all the time where I am just like one thing to the next. Like I have 3 days to make it across the U.S. or something like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so, day one was interesting, but I had an amazing time. Some friends came out, and then a group of friends cycled out of Boulder with me.
Oh, that's
We
really
got lunch,
sweet.
and it was really nice.
Yeah.
And so then they left. I continued on my way. It's like early afternoon when this like kind of classic afternoon thunderstorm popped up. But
Cue the thunderstorm.
it's the Midwest, and I underestimated how quickly Colorado became the Midwest. It's immediately.
It's as soon as you like get out of Denver, it is so
Totally.
flat. Even Denver's flat, but
yeah, and so it's very Midwestern, and so it was early afternoon. The storm started popping up. And it was like getting kind of windy, and it was raining a bit. These little rain cells, and then this just giant thunder cell.
oh,
I could hear it, and then was seeing all this lightning, and this front just like washed over me.
And what do you do if there's no structure around?
Well, so this was the problem. Was like I was on this small road. There was no structures. It's just open farmland, but
Like not even a house in sight.
not even a house in sight, not even a tree.
Wow.
It was just perfectly flat.
Do you just like lay on the ground?
So, well, I was pretty scared of this lightning because I was watching these strikes hit the ground and it just like roll over me. It was so loud. But then the hail started, and it was like hailing hard, like painfully.
Oh my
So I
god.
put up my tent just right on the side of the road just to get out of the hail.
Yeah.
And then I just sat there.
And just
It was
waited.
really intense, like really, really intense.
Oh my gosh, that's so scary.
And there was probably an hour of some of the loudest thunder I've ever heard, and the whole tent is being like illuminated by lightning. And then it rolled over me, and I packed up the tent again and got back on the bike
It just kept going.
and kept going. But that night I stayed in a hotel at night, and I was looking at the news, and that front had spun up like a ton of tornadoes.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Big ones that had ripped up roads, and
There could have been like, because you weren't looking out of your tent, were you?
no,
Like
I
could have
didn't know
been
what
right
you could have
there.
done.
Yeah.
At that point, like it'd be really hard to even deal with it.
Yeah,
But
my better maybe not to even know
Yeah,
until like you hear it, because you know it
and then
like
you
sounds
can,
like a train,
actively
and then just actively hope for
do
the best.
something, yeah. But yeah, it was
Not much to do. I feel like in that moment, once you start hearing
Totally.
the whistle, like
Yeah, it
there's
was
not
pretty,
much.
It was pretty full on, and then that definitely kind of set the tone for just every afternoon. These like huge storms.
Oh
And
gosh.
every night, huge storms. And so I had a couple more like close calls, and then my dad has a camper van, and so he was like, "Hey, like if you want me to drive the camper van out, and so you have somewhere to like get away from storms for like a week," then he said he could do that, and so he came out and spent a week with me,
Nice.
and that was really helpful because
Oh, I bet. Starting off.
yeah, it allowed me to do what it really allowed me to do was way more miles, because rather than having to stop at like 2 p.m. every day,
Yeah.
I would just cycle until the big storms came, and then he would come pick me up, and we'd go somewhere safe and
Yeah, and wait.
and just wait.
And did you bike it? Do you bike at night?
I bike at night a lot.
A lot. I bet here it'd be better to bike at night just because of the heat.
The problem with biking at night in Thailand is the dogs.
Oh, that would be so scary.
They're a lot more aggressive and active right after sunset. But yeah, I do enjoy biking at night. It's cooler. Definitely a bit of a night person. Like I do really well in the evenings.
Okay.
And so across America, I was spending a lot of time riding until like 10, 11 at night.
Wow.
And that was really enjoyable, and it was really good riding for that.
Yeah. So was that the worst weather you experienced in the
Definitely
U.S.?
not.
Definitely not.
The worst weather. So the two other kind of significant, the three other like significant weather events were Europe had one of the worst heat waves ever.
Oh.
it was over like 103, 104
Oh,
every day, which
wow.
is like 43, 44 Celsius across Italy. And I
Wow.
became like severely heat strokey.
Oh, is that what you were talking to me about?
I think we were talking about this earlier. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, like vomiting, and it was really, really scary.
And had to go to the hospital. The 9 yards.
No, this was.
Oh, okay.
With this, what we were talking about earlier was just like I just got a bad like sunburn and sun poisoning.
Oh, sun poisoning. So this was just like overheating.
Yeah,
heat
I was just
stroke.
so hot.
And what did you do? Did you stop like a hotel?
I stopped.
Stayed?
And well, I had this one. I was in Turin, like approaching Turin, Italy, just after the Alps, and that was the first like really hot day. It had been hot in France, but not that hot.
Yeah.
Like 95, not 105. And it was so hot, and I got a hotel, just being like, I just need somewhere to cool off.
Some AC.
And the hotel had AC, but it didn't really work. And it was probably midnight, and I was laying on top of the covers in this bed, just soaked in sweat.
Oh, God.
And
I know the feeling.
Yeah,
it's not a good feeling.
It was horrible, and I was like, I just can't get, like, I was having like a panic attack. Like, I just couldn't. It felt like claustrophobic.
Yeah.
I couldn't get cool. And so I got in the shower, and I sat on the floor of the shower with the water turned all the way cold, just like a small like stream of water coming out of the shower head,
and
like
slept
onto
there.
my forehead. And I stayed the entire night.
Wow.
Just, like, sitting in this shower.
Did you sleep at all?
No.
Yeah.
And then I rode to Turin the next day, and I spent some time, and it was fine. And then I worked my way like further into Italy, and then it was just so hot, so I took a train down to the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And then just continued on from there.
Wow. Yeah, the heat would be insane.
Yeah, and then the other really bad weather was the Northeast in America and Canada.
Yeah.
There's some pretty historic rains. It rained pretty much every day.
And you pushed through the rain?
Yeah, I don't mind riding in the rain, actually.
Yeah.
I really like it. Particularly when it's not horribly cold. Like, it's kind of fun,
Yeah, no, I mean, especially if it was hot, rain is nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. It actually, riding in the rain was totally fine. But everything started to flood. So as you might have remembered, there was these really bad floods in Vermont this past year. I was in Vermont like during the height of those floods. And roads were closing and bridges were being taken out. And I had multiple times where I was riding and got like a National Weather Service advisory.
Yeah.
Being like shelter in place, severe flash flood warning. And I remember I was at this cafe in just like a small town I think it was in Vermont, like just had entered Vermont. It might have been New York. It was in that area. And it was raining. It had been raining in the morning. I stopped in the cafe, get a coffee, warm up for a minute, and this weather advisory service went off. And like it was raining, but it wasn't that bad. Like the roads were wet, but not like underwater.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is an overreaction. Like, I'm just going to get back on the bike. But I'll give it like 20 minutes to see what the rain does.
Yeah.
And within probably 5 to 10 minutes of me like having that thought, the bottom of the door went underwater from the standing water on the street.
Wow.
And the cafe started to flood, like flood with water.
Wow.
And so I ended up carrying my bike and this was like in like 20, 30 minutes after this announcement.
Yeah.
I was carrying my bike through knee-deep water, like walking along the street that I had just ridden down that had been completely dry. I mean, it was raining, but like not standing water.
Yeah.
And so I was like carrying my bike through like
wow, so quick.
water
just like
in this
happens like
flood.
that.
And then that kind of reached a height in Nova Scotia. When a bunch of roads had collapsed and been taken out.
Oh, wow.
And I was involved in this really bad flood in Nova Scotia as well. I had been camped in the night before, just like in this forest, and then I had gone to another campground. I was riding to another campground that night. Arrived at the campground host was like, hey, we're not allowing tents right now because of all the rain. There's this hotel, you should go there. I went to the hotel. The next day, I ride out of this town, and I kept getting diverted by these signs, and I kept getting passed by fire trucks and ambulances and stuff. And then eventually I came upon this scene, and there were, 5, 6 ambulances, fire trucks, rescue
Oh
crews.
gosh, not good to
And
roll up
no,
on.
Not good at all. And there's like, a bunch of signs around these detours.
And what was going on?
Well, so there had been a flood, and all I knew at the time was there was these detour signs. So I was like following these detours, and then the road that it like detoured you onto had completely collapsed. And so I had to like double back all the way around. I remember being like so annoyed, like really upset.
Just like can't get through
anywhere. And so I ended up finding this dirt road, and it just like squiggled its way around, and I got through and got to another place, pouring rain, got to another hotel, and I was chatting with the front desk like attendant. She was like, "Oh my god, like did you like see the news? Like where did you come from?" I was like, "I came through here." And she's like, "Oh my god, like did you see the news? Did you see the news?" I was like, "No."
What happened?
So I like pulled up the like news app on my phone, I think. And yeah, so this road that I had been on had flash flooded.
Excuse me.
Probably like one day from when I would have been there.
Wow.
And had swept like 4 or 5 cars into this lake, and like I think 3 people drowned.
Oh.
And I definitely felt like
crazy.
Yeah, and that was one of those times where I was like, oh, like that was actually like really dangerous.
Yeah, well, it's good that like kind of you were lagged back behind,
It was just like a total like luck of the draw.
Yeah, like I think about it all the time of like when something goes wrong, I miss a bus or like whatever it is, I'm late. I'm always thinking like, okay, like I can't be that stressed. I'm probably missing out on getting injured or like dying or something like that. So sometimes it just works out like that. And I'm really curious, like how do you have like an app that you use your maps on? Like,
oh, that's a good question.
Or do you have paper maps also?
There's an app called Komoot. That most long bike packing trips people are using. It uses, there's a service called OpenStreetMaps, which is a publicly available collection of GIS data. And a lot of mapping apps run off of OpenStreetMaps or OSM.
That's so cool.
So Komoot is just an app that allows you to look at OpenStreetMaps, and then it also allows you to create bike routes on it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I studied GIS in college.
Oh, no way.
And do special technologies and stuff like that.
That's sick. Yeah, that's super cool. There's a bunch of cool stuff to do with.
Yeah, there really is. I want to go back and learn more. It was just my minor.
Oh, cool.
But I would like to go get masters or something.
Totally. That'd be super cool. Yeah, and there's so much interesting stuff with that mapping.
I love it. So interesting. But so you mainly use this app.
Use this app called Komoot, and then I run that. I create the routes on there, and then I run that onto a Garmin bike computer.
Oh, okay.
And so I have my map on the bike computer.
Because for me, I was picturing you with the big paper map and trying to find these little off the kilter roads.
There's definitely been times that I wish I had a paper map when I didn't.
Because does your phone ever die? Is the computer stay the whole time? Because I'm thinking it's like a dive computer is what I'm picturing this Garmin computer like something like this.
Very similar to a dive computer.
Yeah.
It has its screen is a solar.
Solar powered.
And so I get days and days and days and days off of it.
Yeah.
It charges in 20 minutes.
That's amazing.
And I also have a dynamo, so my front hub, when my front wheel spins, it creates power, which then runs to a light, so I can just run my light off the front wheel, and then that is a USB port, so I can charge things off the back of that as well.
Cool.
It's not super efficient, but it works in a pinch to this power.
So I'm also curious, how many times, or maybe if you never even have you thought about quitting and just giving up? Have you ever thought of it?
I'm not sure if quitting is quite the correct term.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I like about this trip is that if I really truly needed a change, there's many alternatives to quitting.
Yeah, like just giving up the bike and just traveling, maybe?
No, like I could continue riding, but I could like
Not do the full loop.
yeah, or I know of some other people that have done long I've done like around the world rides in this past like year, and just skip Central Asia because it's really hard. Skip India, Nepal, 'cause it's really hard. Um, and that's definitely an option. Um, and so yeah, I think one time that in the moment I actually didn't really think about it.
Yeah.
But I guess like a pretty significant story from the trip. I got hit by a car
Oh.
in Uzbekistan,
Yeah.
and
Did you have to go to the hospital?
no.
How bad was it?
It wasn't that bad. The car hit me like the back of, kind of like this, the top of the taillight hit like the bottom of my elbow, and then the mirror kind of hit me like in the side, and I kind of like scraped down the car.
Yeah.
So it didn't hit me like square on, but I mean.
And what did the people do? Did they just keep going?
No, they stopped, and the guy was like very sorry about it.
Yeah.
He didn't speak any English, and I was like pretty upset.
Yeah, I could
couldn't feel
imagine.
my hand at all, and like,
oh gosh,
it was really scary, and I was really like like shaking with like just
like
fear,
fear,
adrenaline,
adrenaline, yeah.
And he like came over to like apologize or whatever, but he didn't speak any English. And I was like pretty aggressive.
I could imagine, yeah.
And I think someone saw this kind of whole thing play out, and somebody spoke English actually, stopped or spoke a little bit of English, and kind of like communicated, but there's not really anything for. I was thinking about like you could call the police, but like what does that do?
Yeah, like
And
I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like if you get hit in a foreign country, there's not really like insurance.
Yeah.
You know,
it wasn't gonna get me anything. And
yeah.
So I took maybe 20 minutes.
Oh
and
gosh.
I just sat on this like dirt shoulder of this road. And I remember I had been listening to a podcast. And the podcast had ended, and like 45 seconds later, I got hit.
Oh gosh.
And I like sat there for 20 minutes, and then I spent a few minutes like finding a new podcast. And then my bars had been kind of bent, and like the bar tape, which is kind of like where your hands go on the bars, that had all been torn up, and like the back of my handlebars had been damaged. So I kind of corrected all of that and did a once over of the bike, and I just kept riding.
Once over the bike, once over the body.
Yeah, but I definitely didn't really process it.
Because you're just still running on adrenaline. Well, something like that, they say your nervous system takes, if it's something like a life-threatening action or like, you know, you have near-death experience, it takes your body, I think it's like 9 hours or something like that for your nervous system to re-regulate itself and bring it back down. So like
that totally makes sense. Yeah.
So effects happen for, even if it's something like a dog tries to attack you, you get really scared, whatever it is. Like I feel like the rock climbing that we did today, I feel like my nervous system is going to be jacked on that because I was so fucking scared up there.
No, totally fair.
Yeah, but so it takes a while. So I'm sure you were still just running on adrenaline, not really processing.
Totally. And I was definitely just like trying to hammer miles because the weather was already really cold.
Oh gosh!
And it was snowing in the Panama.
Go from the cold to the heat, or heat to the cold. Yeah. Where was this again? In one of the stands?
This was Uzbekistan, yeah.
Uzbekistan.
Kind of near the city of Bukhara.
It's crazy because, like, honestly, you don't think of the Middle East of being cold.
Yeah,
but it's like it's so. I guess it is
Central Asia.
Is that Central Asia?
So, like general, yeah. But I mean, it's big mountains and cold. Like the deserts get really cold.
Yeah, it's just so like dry. Maybe
I was waking up in like in my tent and be covered in frost. It'd be below freezing every night.
But you never thought about giving up.
Well, so I had this incident, and then I didn't really like. I just rode to Dushanbe. Like I kept pressing.
Yeah.
Then when I got to India, and the first day riding in India was pretty intense.
I bet with all the traffic and all the people,
so
it's
much
so
traffic,
dense.
so many people, a culture that I found very challenging to adapt to.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a challenge. It's a challenge country.
It is, yeah. And it's not like better or worse, but there's less of a... Definitely things that would be considered inappropriate in America or in the Western world. Like, if you want someone's attention, like, you wouldn't just, like, grab their arm. Like, in India, people were grabbing me, like, all the time. Like, 30 times a day.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Like, they're very, like, not really super aware of, like, personal space and boundaries.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that just, like, it set me off.
I wouldn't want that. I'd go off on people, too, if they touch me like that.
Yeah. It wasn't really that I was, like, angry at the individual people, but the weight of, like, there's so much traffic and so many close calls, and it felt like I could be hit at any moment. And that, like, triggered the response to being hit by the car in Uzbekistan that I just, like, hadn't had yet.
Hadn't processed it. You just kind of
like,
pushed it in the back of your brain.
Totally. And I was, like, saying, like, I was having a really hard time finding places to stay.
I feel like you might need some therapy after this trip.
Oh, for sure. But that's what podcasts are.
What'd you say? Oh,
yeah.
That's what the podcasts are for?
Yeah.
Because the whole time you're listening to podcasts while you're writing music.
No, that's why you go on podcasts and have chats about it.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
But
I'm a good listener.
Yeah. But yeah, it was just like intense, and I was running into like a lot of scams where like I would see a hotel and then it wouldn't actually exist like in real life, or like I'd call, be like, "Do you have a room?" And they're like, "Yes." Like, give this your credit card information.
And you're like,
then
no.
It's like, oh, it felt weird, and then I would arrive into town, and of course, it wouldn't be there.
Gotta be careful of the scams.
Totally.
That's why I hear there's not as many scams as people say.
Definitely not.
But you have to book a lot in advance because Thailand is so popular.
Exactly.
Things book up, but I'm always worried about scams too.
Totally. But yeah, it was just intense, and like I was having this like kind of full-on experience where like I couldn't relax in the evenings. I'd get so tense.
And how many months in are you at this point? Like 5 months?
I was like 5 months in.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Like 5 or 6.
So it's been a while.
It had been a while, yeah. And now I've been on the road like 8 months now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it had been a while, but I was having this experience where, every night I'd be so tense. And I was like crying for like hours every night. Like I hated the idea of getting back on the bike the next day.
Yeah.
Like I hated it. And
it's like I gotta keep going.
But then I'd like wake up in the morning and I would get back on the bike. And
you'd feel better, or you would just push?
I'd feel horrible.
You'd push through.
Yeah, like I remember like one morning, like I was so upset and anxious about having to ride that like I was like feeling nauseous. I was so upset about it. It was like a really intense experience. But at the end of the day, it's like I said I was gonna cycle around the world, and I said I was gonna cycle from Delhi to Kathmandu, and like
the mentality, the mentality is half the battle. Like, because I wonder if is it pain, is it physical, or is it more mental?
Definitely more mental.
More mental. That's what I was thinking. I feel like that's always what it comes down to is mental game.
And at the end of the day, I think I solved that problem quite well. Like I just shortened my days up. I was riding 50, 60 miles a day.
Taking it easy.
Means I can leave at 9, 10. I can have a little morning to myself, and I can have an evening. And I'd spend the whole evening just trying to like calm myself down, but it was enough that I could get back on the bike the next day, and that got me into Nepal. But I definitely I was like, what am I doing? Like that felt a bit. I definitely thought about calling it there.
Yeah, I can imagine. Is this the hardest thing you've ever done?
Probably.
I don't know you very well, but I can't imagine what would be harder.
In 2021, I rode the North Atlantic.
Okay.
So we took a rowboat.
Oh, you rode it. I thought you said like rode.
No.
So you took a rowboat
from New York City to Ireland.
Wow.
But we were not successful. That's again like a way longer story. But the short of that is that we were unsuccessful. I'm
gonna have to come visit you again and get all these stories.
Please do.
Yeah, but you were unsuccessful in the rowboat.
And that was definitely, in some ways, harder.
And what do you mean unsuccessful? Like the Coast Guard had to come pick you up?
Well, we got hit by a hurricane.
Uh,
We broke our rudder. We lost our rudder. We lost.
What is a rudder?
A rudder is how you steer a boat.
Oh, okay. So it's a thing that's like up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it got like ripped off the back of the boat by a wave. We use this thing called a drogue. It's like a parachute on a really thick chain that slows the boat down. It makes it more stable and safer in big weather. And again, like huge wave came and just like shredded the chain, like snapped it.
Wow. And how did you get out?
Well, so there's no one's gonna come get you in the middle of a hurricane, you know?
Yeah, no.
In the middle of the North Atlantic. So we just rode it out for like probably 48 hours.
That's so terrifying.
It was not that scary at the time. Because I was there, there's 3 of us. I've got like full faith in the boat, full faith in the other guys.
I can't even imagine how big is this boat.
22 feet.
Okay, so it's pretty big.
Relatively, yeah.
That sounds big to me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
well, that's incredible.
And so, but yes, that, for context for this trip, that experience was harder in some ways, but this trip is really hard from a mental standpoint of doing it alone.
Alone, that's what I was about to say. Is the part being alone changes the game for sure.
Yeah, like earlier, yeah, as like folks listening to this, you said earlier, we met climbing earlier, and I had a lovely time climbing because the rock is like insane and it's
beautiful.
So cool. But also, I was like, oh my god, like there's people to talk to.
Yeah.
And
because you're so alone on your trip.
Yeah,
because you don't stay at very long places. You're kind of on the move.
The longest stay since Hanoi.
Wow.
And so, and I'll stay here 4 days.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm thinking so we've talked a lot about what has been bad. You know, the weather, you wanting to quit. I want to hear some good stories. I want to hear what have been the highlights? What have been the best countries, the best roads?
I would argue the highlights are in the overcoming of the bad thing.
Overcoming of the bad. Wow, that's beautiful. That is really beautiful.
But that said, there have been some things that were just insanely cool.
Yeah, where's your bliss in this trip?
Slovenia.
Slovenia
is the best country ever.
Is it the people? Is it the views?
People are so nice. The views are amazing.
Is that your favorite country?
Amazing.
Slovenia
and Georgia are Slovenia. Yeah,
I don't know how to say it.
I don't know either. Slovenia is amazing. Georgia, the country of Georgia, is amazing as well.
Yeah.
Georgia has, I think the best way I can describe cycling in Georgia. Georgia has a law very similar to Norway or Scotland, is right to roam. So private property isn't quite the same. Private property exists, but anything that's quote unquote natural, you're allowed to walk there, you're allowed to camp there within, these rules of respect.
Wow, that's amazing.
And yet I never camped in Georgia because every single time I would have camped, someone was like, oh, you can just stay in
at my house.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Just for free.
Yeah.
See, and that's the beauty of doing unique trips like this, is because people are wanting to help you.
Totally.
And wanting you to support you on your journey.
Yeah. And that was incredible. And another just life experience I never would have had otherwise, which is just kind of a wild story as well. So we were talking about how hard India was.
Yeah.
Entering Nepal was like a pinch me experience. So I went across this locals only border crossing. There's no cars allowed. There's no road to this border crossing. It's 5-10 miles on this narrow path, which is not paved, mostly paved in some areas. But the local villages that are on the border use it to get back and forth across this river and across this valley. To go to work, to go to school, go to the farm, all of those things.
Yeah.
So it's, as I'm approaching this border, it's just me and 20 Indian and Nepali people on their bicycles. And there's all of us on our bikes. And there was little kids and grandmothers and
everybody.
This insane experience. It was so beautiful, in this thick jungle. And I was like, oh yeah, like Nepal is like everything I've dreamed of. That I thought this, like how busy India was, how beautiful Nepal is going to be. So I entered Nepal, stayed at this like amazing hotel the first night for like.
But did you enter?
$6.
How did you enter with it a local only?
Well, so it's like quote unquote local only in the sense that like it's not illegal to cross there.
Okay.
I don't think.
You made it out. You're here now.
They didn't actually know how to like stamp me into the country when I got there.
Oh wow.
Which was funny.
But you got a stamp.
But I got stamped.
You got in.
Correct. They stamped me for 1 day.
Wow.
Meaning I was leaving the country the next day. And so.
And you did?
No, I just like ignored it. I was like, I'll figure it out in Kathmandu. Like, it can't be that hard to solve this in the back end, and I'm not going to solve it here.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever. I entered Nepal. Stayed at this amazing. I just remember I stayed at this hotel, and it was like, I'd seen it online, and it was like, yeah, like $5 or $6 US.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you never really know what a hotel is going to be like for like $5.
Yeah.
But it was like so nice.
Ooh, that's
like,
amazing.
So nice. Room service.
Oh, that sounds so great.
It was so good.
Last time I stayed in a hotel that was $5, I could hear the rats crawling in the walls, like as I'm sleeping. It was not very. I put my headphones in and just hope for the best.
The night before I arrived in Krabi, I stayed in again a hotel that was like $2 US.
Oh, and, nice.
There was like ants and spiders crawling all over it.
But
I was so fried that I just like I put my bug net on over my head. I just went to sleep.
Yeah, just cuddled with the spiders.
Yeah, but anyway, so I entered Nepal, and I just had this like incredible experience. It was so beautiful, and the next day I'm riding through this like thick jungle in this national park. It was just mind blowing, and I knew that this next national park is the largest population of Bengal tigers in the world.
Oh,
and it had been closed to cyclists
because of the tiger attacks.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I had prearranged with this wildlife tour company. They were going to come pick me and the bike up in the Jeep, and then drive me to the tour, and then drive me to the other side of the national park. Which was like, that's perfect.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
So they pick me up, get to the lodge, and I'm chatting the next morning with this guide, and we're about to go on safari. He's like, oh, like, did we come pick you up at this other border crossing? I was like, no, like, I took this, like, you know, the, like, locals one, like, the walking, the non-car border. And then I just cycled to the edge of the national park where you guys picked me up.
Yeah.
And he was like, huh, that was brave. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, you know, there was 2 cyclists killed by a tiger in that national park last year, same time.
Wow.
I was like, oh, like, I didn't know that, actually.
That's so... Isn't it crazy when you hear things after you do it and just think that you maybe could die?
Yeah, and, like, there was a sign saying, beware tigers.
Yeah.
But,
that would be an interesting sign to see.
But also, it wasn't like that was the only incident. They have had, like, 100-something fatalities in the past 3 years. Mm-hmm. Which is an insane number.
That's a lot. 300?
I believe it was 100.
Oh, 100. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't remember the exact number, but it's significant.
Yeah.
Like by far the most of anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And actually, a woman had been. I think she lived. She was badly injured. She was riding on the back of a motorcycle, and a tiger like reached out and like swiped her off the back of the motorcycle.
Oh, it just got her.
Yeah. So anyway, it's like this. Pretty intense.
Dangerous. Place. So you get to the hotel and they tell you this.
Yeah. Well, so this was the next day while we were on. I was chatting with this wildlife guide, and we were going to go out. We were going to take this Jeep into the jungle and then walk to look for wildlife. And he is
really asking for it.
Yeah. Well, I was like, what do you mean we're going to walk? And he's carrying like a stick.
And that's all he's got. No gun. Yeah. I would assume a gun.
Me too. But he is of like the native tribe that is from that border region.
Wow.
And this is in Bardia National Park. And he was just like, he's like, no, like, we just do things the way we've always done things. And he's like, if you listen to the monkeys and the deer and the birds, like, you will always know where the animals are.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And it was so interesting. And one of the highlights of that day out, I spent a day with him in the jungle, just like watching him interact with this place that his people have called home for like 5,000 years.
Yeah, thousands of years. So
And
connected to the land.
He was so connected.
Mhm.
He was also just like such a cool guy, and he would get so excited about seeing stuff. Like we would see a bird that he liked, and he would literally be like bouncing up and down.
Oh my god, I
He's
love
like
seeing
70.
people like that. Yeah, that is so cute.
No, maybe not 70. He's like 50, but you know, he's like
Older guy,
just so excited.
That's my favorite thing to see.
Oh, dude.
I love guides like that.
Me too. It was, I mean, a couple of our rock climbing guides this morning were like really, they're psyched as well, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyway, so I had this amazing experience with this guide.
Yeah.
It's the end of the day. We hadn't seen any of the big three. No rhinos, no elephant, no tiger.
Okay.
Or big cats.
Was there hippos?
There are hippos, but we didn't see any.
Okay.
We'd seen a lot of cool stuff. Even just being out in the jungle was amazing.
Especially just you one-on-one with this guy.
It was me, a guide, and a Jeep driver.
Okay.
And so, we just had a really nice time. I was happy, you know.
Yeah.
We're back in the Jeep driving down this dirt road, and I don't know how they spotted this, but the driver he slows and then he stops the car, and they're talking in Nepali, and like hurried, like aggressively. And then he leans over to me and he's like, look at this gap. Like, what do you see in this? Like, what do you see in the forest up there? It's like, oh, like I don't really see anything. He's like, exactly. Like, what is there? He's like, I think it's a leopard. But I mean, we were 300 meters out.
Mm-hmm.
But and he was right. Like, you could see there was something different about the forest.
Mm.
And so the Jeep starts crawling forward, probably about 100 meters out. This animal like sticks its head around the corner and looks at us. And then we see it for a moment. It was really hard to see.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see there's a big cat.
Yeah.
And then it went back into the woods, and the Jeep driver just floored it. And we closed the gap to like where it was, and then he turns the Jeep off because you don't want to be like making noise. You don't want to like drive after them. That's not like respectful of the animal.
For sure.
So we just sit for a minute, and then this giant male leopard like walks out of the jungle 10 meters, 5 meters from the Jeep.
Wow.
And just like walks across this road and like looks at us, and then just continues on his way.
Wow,
And
what
it
a
was
king.
Insane.
That's so cool.
But
oh my gosh, what an experience. So he floored the Jeep like a little bit to like
no, as soon as it wasn't in the road, he just like closed the gap to where it was in the forest and then turned it off.
Yeah. So he was just getting like closer to it really quickly and then just turn it off. Okay, because I was confused. Wow, that's so cool.
Probably the best wildlife sighting I'll ever have in my life.
Wow. That's so incredible.
But also one of those things that like traveling by bike, you're forced to go places you might not choose to go, which is a negative and a positive.
Yeah.
Like not no one goes to Bardia. No one goes to Bardia though.
Yeah.
It's so far from anywhere. It's like 700 miles from Kathmandu, and there's no airport. Like,
wow.
How are you going to get there?
Yeah.
It's like a 15-hour bus. And there's so many other places to go. So there's no tourism, really.
That is the great thing about biking. Like, you have to go so slow also. Exactly. And, like, you can't, there's, like, you can't really fast track it.
Yeah. Another highlight that was, like, pretty significant for me was cycling into St. John's, Newfoundland. I'd been there the year before, like on another trip, and I just love. It's an amazing place. I think it's the best city. It's one of the best cities I've ever been to.
Oh, really? What was in Newfoundland?
Yeah, it's called St. John's.
St. John's. Okay, I think I have heard of that one.
It's just an amazing place, and I had this image of the harbor of where I wanted to ride to, because I was on the sailboat there last year, and that's where we had left from, and I wanted to ride like to the exact spot where our boat had left from.
Yeah.
And so like riding into St. John's, like the sun was just setting.
Kind of nostalgic.
So nostalgic, and like it felt incredible.
Yeah. You had made it across like the first like big leg of your trip, really.
It's like 4,000 miles.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
3,500 or something.
It's a good feeling, I bet.
It's a great feeling. Yeah.
So we're in Thailand now. Next, are you heading down through Malaysia? Or are you flying to Singapore or something?
Yeah, so I'll be cycling from here down through Malaysia to Singapore.
Okay.
I'll go down the west coast of Malaysia through Georgetown, Kuala Lumpur, Malacca, I believe.
I have no idea. I haven't done much research on that area yet.
Yeah, to be fair, I haven't done that much research either.
Are you mainly just like kind of doing your research as you go along? Yeah, me too.
I have a general idea. Like, it is physically possible to cycle to Singapore, I'm sure. I just don't know like which roads I will take exactly. I know I'll go down the west coast.
Yeah.
Other people have done the west coast, said it's amazing.
And then on to Indonesia, or
no, so
how are you getting to Australia?
I'll fly from Singapore to Perth because Singapore is the end of the Asian landmass, and there's like a sign there. It feels like a very nice.
Oh, nice way to end Asia.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's a sign at the famous like harbor in Singapore. Says like end of the Asian continent, or Asian mainland or whatever. So I'll go there. I was originally hoping to cycle to Bali, and then down to Australia, but I had a lot of problems with the Indonesian visa, actually. It's definitely doable, but
just because with a U.S. passport,
more so the bike. It's definitely doable, but it would require some alterations.
I wonder why the bike.
It's more about like where you're allowed to and not allowed to go.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, mainly I would have to fly into Jakarta. And if I'm going to fly to Jakarta, just to ride from Jakarta to Bali, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And so...
Would that be like kind of back, like opposite direction wise?
No, it's the right direction, but you're... Jakarta is in like the middle of the main Indonesian islands. And then Bali is like the end of it.
Okay.
But if I were to go there to Indonesia, it would make more sense to take the ferry from Malaysia.
Yeah.
To Indonesia. I forget what that Lombok, I think, is that next island, but I forget.
I really don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah, I go down through there.
Okay, so you're flying into Perth.
I'll fly to Perth.
Yeah.
And then I will cycle across the outback.
Wow.
Specifically, I will ride the Nullarbor Highway.
That is gonna be crazy. Yeah. Through like the most some of the most deserted places, like I feel like in the world, like, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The Nullarbor Plain, the notorious part of it, is I believe it's 800 miles or 1,000 miles, which is like 1,600-ish kilometers.
So how do you carry your water? How do you get water?
So that is a really good question.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sold yet on what I'm going to do. There are road houses every 1 to 200 miles, 2 to 300 kilometers.
Yeah.
And those will have rooms, a restaurant, and water.
Yeah.
I will then add some new water storage system to my bike. I just don't know what it will be yet.
Do you have like a filtration system now that you use?
But realistically, I don't really use it. Because I cover distances quick enough that I can usually find somewhere to get water.
Yeah.
In the pannier somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I think I want to be able to carry 8 liters of water.
Yeah, you need a lot to go through all that dry area. So you're going to go across the outback, and then what edge town are you going to be on the coast of Australia?
I'll go to Sydney.
Sydney.
Which is like Perth to, so Perth to Sydney. And the question is, the Nullarbor ends at Adelaide.
Okay.
I can then go back into the desert across New South Wales. Saves me 400 or 500 miles. Or I can hug the coast and ride the pretty iconic Great Ocean Road.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to do that.
Okay.
Because
sounds beautiful.
It's supposed to be amazing. Like, people go to Australia to cycle the Great Ocean Road.
So you have to.
I think I should.
I think you should too.
It'll also be quite a change of pace from a few weeks of just like riding the perfectly straight
Outback
road.
Yeah.
That's
gonna be so insane. I can't wait. Are you recording this? Like, do you have a GoPro? Are you recording this at all?
I mostly shoot photos.
Just
so
photos.
I have my like a Fuji X-T5, like a nice camera, and
Cool.
then I shoot videos, post like reels on Instagram and stuff.
Nice. That's awesome. I can't wait to see more of it. And then from Australia, are you hitting South America at all?
No.
So from Australia, are you flying to California?
I'll fly to LA.
Fly to LA.
And I'll ride back to Boulder.
And then how long will that trip take you think?
It's 1,400 miles, so 2,000 kilometers? 1,800 kilometers?
That's still pretty, that sounds pretty hefty in my book.
LA to Boulder. And it's 3,000 miles from Perth to Sydney.
Yeah.
So 4,500 miles, call it.
Yeah.
There. And then it's 800 miles from here to Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
So 5,300-ish left.
5,300 miles left.
And I've done like 12,400-ish. Because Bangkok was 12,000 miles.
12,400. Wow.
So it'll be right around 18,000 miles.
Wow. That is so incredible. So I do have one question that I like to ask people at the end of the podcast.
Ooh, yes. Fine.
And it's kind of more of a rapid fire question, so don't think about it too much. You don't really necessarily need to give like too much backstory if you don't want to. It's kind of like whatever you think about. But I always like to ask people like, what's the best advice that you've been given like during some of your travels that have really like helped you with the rest of your travels?
Two things, but it's the same one.
Okay.
When we rode the North Atlantic,
Uh-huh.
It was my good mate's Ray's kind of project. He owned the boat. He'd tried before. It was his project. He brought myself and Ryan, our other friend, on. He put on the boat a quote, which his mom said, which was like her like core life values that will like carry you through.
Yeah.
And that's in Irish, it's Bra Dokas Plan Korje Brod Nishnak Dilsha. And it means love, family, friends, courage, pride, and loyalty. Or
love, family, friends, courage, pride, and loyalty.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And I think that like works quite well as kind of a framework.
Yeah.
Like, to fall back to.
Those are some good morals, yeah.
Yeah, and then also on the boat we had the like Latin phrase "nec timere, nec timide."
What does that mean?
Which means neither rashly nor timidly.
Neither rashly nor timidly. I like that. Like living neither rashly nor timidly.
Exactly, and I think sometimes
that's awesome.
It's easy to be like, oh, like. I sometimes find myself being like, oh, like I've been sick or whatever, but I gotta go. Like I gotta get back on the road. Like I'm spending too much time. And that's oftentimes coming from a place of, not like insecurity, but like it's not logical. Like it doesn't help me go faster over the course of the trip or like have a better trip or anything like that.
Yeah, because if you rush, because I always think like if you're sick, just stay put. Because I always forget shit. I lose everything when I try to travel when I'm sick.
It just doesn't, it's
not worth it. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my advice that I got, that somebody gave me my very like first week of my very first solo trip. And they told me, if you just keep a smile on your face, everything will be okay. And like, just keep a smile and everything will be okay. So I like to just tell people that one so they carry it around because it helps me a lot. Like just kind of finding the humor within like sticky situations and just like keeping a smile on your face, being happy where you are, being in the moment.
I think that's really good advice. When I left, so there's a thing in cycling, in road cycling and racing, where riders will usually have a card on their handlebars. That's basically like a race rundown. It's a plan, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left I didn't put it on right when I left Boulder, but after a couple weeks, I had it in my mind. But after a couple weeks, I ended up putting it just tucked on my handlebars, a note, and it was basically like the game plan, which was crave miles, don't forget to dance, and
crave miles, don't forget to dance.
yeah,
That's awesome. I love dancing.
yeah, me too. And so, yeah, both like literally, but also like the metaphorically of like it should be like enjoyable.
Yeah.
And like the movement of cycling should feel nice.
Yeah, like it's like we're doing this for fun, you know?
Totally.
Like that's what I think about whenever, like, if I go to music festivals and it's really hard to get there, it's really stressful, and I'm remembering, I'm like, wait, I'm actually doing this for fun. Like, I don't need to be stressing out right now.
Totally.
And that's why I need to remember that more on my trips.
It's a hard thing to remember.
It really is.
But yeah, I think your advice of keeping a smile and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I just like to share that with people.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for such an amazing episode.
Dude, thank you.
So we're 12,300 miles in.
We're 12,000 and something.
12,000 and something miles in.
Yeah.
And we got how much to go?
Like 5,000 and something.
Okay, so we got 12,000 something miles in. Got about 5,000 miles to go on this trip, cycling around the world. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to say? We're feeling good.
Oh, the last thing I would say is I think bike packing and traveling by bike is the best way
to travel.
On a few different reasons and levels.
Okay.
The first is on any scale, it's really enjoyable. So a weekend away, a night away, riding to your local woods or hill or mountain or whatever, or campground or hotel can be such a fun and a way to get that like adventurous feeling right at home. And then also, I think that bikes are cool because it's a very relatable mode of transportation.
Like
everywhere
for people everywhere in the world,
people ride bikes, and there's less of that in the more well-off world.
Yeah.
But I can show up and I have shown up in a place like, Central Asia, Uzbekistan, and I remember riding along, and there was a kid on his way to school, and he didn't speak English. I didn't speak Uzbek or Russian, but we're doing the same thing, and that's so much more, like, it's so valuable for me, but also so much more valuable for like other people.
Yeah.
So I forget who the quote is from, but there is a strong argument to be made that bikes were the greatest initial tool to like women's emancipation and like women's right to vote and right to work and things like that, because in much of the world women were not allowed to, they were like very repressed and not allowed to drive a car, and for a lot of people the bicycle became a mode of transport.
Wow.
And
that literally sent chills through my body.
There's a great film by Patagonia called Life of Pi, P-I-E.
Okay.
It's about these two women, a couple that own a pizza shop, and in this mountain bike town, and it's about why bikes are so like significant. Wow. And I also think that
I'll have to watch that.
You'd really like it. And I do think there's an argument as well for bikes. Riding a bike is like a fundamentally human thing to do. Like, it was one of humanity's key inventions.
Yeah.
And so riding a bike feels like a very...
It's like satisfying.
It's very satisfying when you think about it from that perspective.
That's amazing. Do you have any like tips? We're running out of time a little bit, but do you have any tips for somebody who wants to do a big bike trip? Mainly I say running out of time because my phone might die.
I think that
Is it just a mentality game?
The
physical pain is what is going to get me, I think.
No, I think it's mental, but also you don't need to ride very far or very hard to have a really nice time. And also, bike seats, bike saddles are more different than people give them credit for, or one might expect just walking into a Walmart or something.
Do you have a
And
pretty cushiony one?
no,
Yours is pretty small?
mine is actually firmer
Uh-huh.
than some
Okay.
because there's a lot of different variety, and if you're gonna change anything on the bike, change the saddle.
Okay.
Like go to a shop and get something that feels nice, because you'll have a way nicer time.
That's good.
It's not that
good
expensive.
Advice, yeah. Yeah, if your booty's going to be on there for months at a time,
Yeah.
better spend some money on it. Cool. Well,
Lovely.
thank you so much.
Dude, thank you so much. It's lovely to chat.
Yeah. I was going to say something else. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for the episode. And hopefully this audio is pretty good. We've had boats driving by us. Like I said, we're on this beautiful balcony. The hostel started playing some music. So hopefully the audio is pretty good. But thank you everybody for tuning in and listening to the podcast. And we will catch y'all all next time. Bye-bye.
Lovely.